Well, welcome back, health professionals, to the Entrepreneurial Clinician podcast. We are well into season 4, and today's guest is somebody I've known for 17 years. We discovered when I was recently on her podcast. And this conversation could go in a million different directions, but just as a warning, there will be swearing. So if you're going to be easily offended by that, probably don't listen to this podcast. You've got little people with you who are in the car, warn them. Maybe they could count all the words. Maybe we could end up with a swear jar. What do you think, Nat? We could have a swear jar. Maybe that's where I can raise sponsorship for the podcast.
What happened?
But what's a good idea? But before we get too invested in our conversation, I just want to acknowledge the Darug people of the land that I find myself in today. I'm in the lower Blue Mountains. I give thanks and honor the elders past, present, and emerging. And I want to thank the Darug people for taking such great care of this land and allowing me the opportunity to live here today. So burnout, Dr. Nat Green, that's what this whole episode is about. Well, this whole series is about this time. But before we get stuck into your incredible burnout story, tell us who you are and what you're doing, and maybe a little bit about where you've come from.
Thank you so much, Jo, for having me on your podcast. I always love our chats, and I feel very privileged and honoured to be here. And yes, as you said, burnout is my forte these days. I have a background in clinical and health psychology. I've been around the block a while, about 34 years professionally. And I also have a master's in rehab counselling. So I think you and I connected initially through the rehab counselling field.
Yes.
And yeah, I've had a very varied work history, working in jails, in community health and occupational rehab. Let me think. Lots of different variety of things. And then I spent a year at Port Arthur after the massacre, which I haven't talked about hugely, but you know, here I am today, an open book. So we thought we'd mention that as well, because that most likely did contribute to some burnout. And then I worked in a pain clinic in Sydney, and then I really got into private practice and worked for myself for a very long time, until I walked away in 2014, and then done consulting and coaching work ever since. But right now, I'm not working at all. So that's me in a nutshell.
That is you in a nutshell. Now, I had totally missed the Port Arthur connection. So for our listeners, particularly our international listeners, Port Arthur was a mass shooting event here in Tasmania. It was the event that caused our federal government to go, let's go and buy back all the guns. And it's one of the reasons why we feel a lot calmer and safer in our communities, because we just don't have the prevalence of guns as in other parts of the world. Doesn't mean we don't have gun violence, though. But that was an absolutely shocking time for our country. And knowing that you were there now makes me go, oh, some pieces are now fitting together, but we'll get to that. I think one of the things I want to also draw out for you is that you had quite a large staff in your private practice. I mean, you're in regional New South Wales. It's not like you're in a big city. And at one stage you had, you know, quite a few staff members. And I remember the time that we were talking and you went, I am done managing people. That was quite a significant conversation for us, wasn't it? Can you remember that time?
I'm pretty sure I can recall that, Jo. Yes, I had about 25 staff, which across various regional towns in New South Wales was a lot at the time. There was no telehealth. It wasn't online. So you didn't have a team like that. It was a number of psychologists and admin staff. There were a lot of people to manage, lots of different personalities and lots of amazing, gifted team members. They were lovely people, but looking back, I was exhausted and I just thought, I can't do people anymore.
Yeah.
Clue number one, perhaps.
The
It's like,
psychologist says, I can't do people anymore.
yeah, I'm all peopled out.
Yes, I'm all peopled out. It's not a fun place for me. So I've asked you to prepare for this podcast today. Otherwise, we would be here for 6 hours, just because we can chat. So, do you want to share a time when burnout was really prevalent to you? Like you kind of knew, oh crap, I am here again. And have you taken or did you take specific steps to overcome it?
Great question, Jo. Now, I am so glad that you used the word again, because I appear to be a very slow learner. I could honestly say I have, with hindsight, the benefit of hindsight's always good, been burnt out a number of times. I think we'll go back to, working in OC rehab, and I was in regional New South Wales, and I'm someone who gives everything 500%. I don't just half do a job. So I was working crazy hours, like 50-hour weeks, 60-hour weeks. When I worked for other people, that's just what I did and who I was. And that's a pattern that definitely has continued throughout every workplace I've ever been in. Note to self, that needs to change. So working ridiculous hours, just the self-sacrificing is probably one of my underlying behavioral patterns that I learnt very well. I had a good teacher with that one from my mum, and really worked that, well, my clients really matter. I love my clients. I really wanted to make a difference. So that is what I gave 100%, 500% to, really. And there was the OC rehab, traveling all over the place and not stopping. And I didn't have a partner or a family. So work was everything to me. And I threw myself in. And so that was the first one. And then working at Port Arthur, as I mentioned, they were 16-hour days, 7 days a week. And, I don't say that for anyone to feel sorry for me or anything. Again, it was the most amazing, privileged experience. And I say privileged, it was a horrendous time, but those amazing people let me into their world, accepted me, and I just wanted to help them, and they were hurting. So I just knew that I could help, and I wanted to make a difference. So it was after that where I came home, and life was pretty boring, really.
Wow. Interesting.
Going back.
Yeah.
It was like, I've been so switched on, 16-hour days, 7 days a week, no break, keep going, keep going, keep going. And then it was like, I have to go back to just seeing, and I mean this respectfully, just seeing a client who, had a sore arm.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
And that, that was very important for that client, and I needed to be there to help them because that was my job, but it didn't feel fulfilling. I started to think, this is a bit boring, in inverted commas, and I just felt, dissatisfied, and started to get what I now know are those signs of burnout. And I actually recall sticking my hand up and saying, I think I need to see someone.
Yeah.
Mistake number 2.
And
that, again, my story, and I'm not saying it's a mistake to ask for help, and I'll definitely talk more about that down the track. But at that point, it was like, I felt weak. I should be able to cope. What's going on? And I look back and I think not once was I offered a debrief ever. After a year of that work, I look back now and think, oh my God, what were they thinking? What was I thinking not to ask? But asking to me equated to weakness.
Yes.
And I just thought, no, keep going, keep going. And in the end, I thought, oh, no, I'm feeling like something's wrong. And they begrudgingly, and I mean begrudgingly, offered, oh, okay, you can have one session.
Excellent.
That was good, wasn't it? nice. So I had my one session and I got to pick who it was, and it wasn't a psychologist. It was a guy who he was actually a pastor at a church down in Nowra. And he'd been at Port Arthur in the early days, and I knew that he got it, and I connected with him, and I really liked him. So I went down and I had my one session, drove all that way, and it was brilliant because he knew what I was talking about. He got me, and he just said, Nat, this is normal. Of course you feel like this. You got to give yourself a bit of time to just come back, do the things you need to do. And if that's not working, then, maybe get out and do something else. Sure. Okay. So that it normalized it for me. And I thought, okay. So I didn't deal with anything. It was, okay, I'm normal. That's good. And move forward and do the next thing. And again, went into my normal patterns, busy, wearing busyness as a badge of honor. Yep, not. Note number 3. That's not helpful. No. And I did that really on all my working life. I kept going. I was really busy, working crazy hours in my private practice. And I had moments where I would just ignore my own needs, I guess, and start to get frustrated at some of my staff because, they were going off sick and needing mental health days. And I thought, okay, yep. And it started to get a bit frustrating. And I thought, that's not good. So I restructured my business so many times. It was ridiculous. And then I probably hit my greatest moment of getting a message and still not hearing. My 4x2 moment. It took me going to hospital and having a surgery.
Yeah.
And I know you know this story because we've talked about this many times. The surgery didn't go well. I ended up with a golden staph infection, was in and out of hospital, 4 surgeries, 8 months, almost died. And looking back now, my moment of clue number 4 should have been sitting in bed on my laptop, almost dying, having a nurse come to me going, what the hell are you doing? Get off your laptop. Put it away. Your world doesn't revolve around work.
No, hang on. Wait, what did she dare say? I'm sorry. I've just totally interrupted. Excuse me, love.
You just don't understand.
You don't get it. You obviously don't know how to work hard.
Exactly. Oh, dear. Says I to nurses who we know work extremely
that's
hard.
Why I'm laughing too, because we know that nurses work extremely hard and suffer with the same types of issues that we are suffering with. Yet my automatic judgment there was also to tell her, what do you mean I can't work? Stop it. I've got to get better. I need to work.
I have to pay my staff. I have to do this. It can't go without me. And yeah. Anyway, you get the picture. And that forced me into having a little bit of time off, but not much, because I kept going. And I look back now and thought, my gosh, there were so many signs of burnout. My autoimmune disorder that also came with that should have been another indicator, now that I have the knowledge that I have now, that was my body's way of trying to give me a message that you're not listening. I've tried to kill you. You didn't listen. You kept going. You didn't take my messages on board. I'm going to make you feel this somehow. So that was another wake-up call. And, I could go on. There are so many episodes of burnout, and that doesn't touch on me when I finally got the message 2 years ago.
Yeah. So I just want to get, there's a lot I want to talk about there. So number one, going back to the vicarious trauma that would have been experienced in Port Arthur, like this was back in 2004. So we've learned a lot more about trauma since then, right?
1996.
Oh, shit.
That one?
Sorry. It
Yeah.
was 1996.
Yeah,
Huh.
that was. I know
That's
it's hard to realize that much
holy
time has passed.
crap.
I know.
Yes. Sorry. So it's been a real, and the nation still feels that. Anywho, but the response from your employer at that time, I just like, what do you mean you need help? So I had a similar experience. Not I was the manager of a national service provider, and I went to one of the managing directors at the time and said, "Hey, we've just put two psychologists into a hotel that had a very public celebrity suicide in it."
Oh, right.
All
Yes.
right, so you've
Got
worked
it.
out what that
Yep.
is.
Yep.
And we got the contract to send somebody in to debrief all the staff. So it was very, very high profile. It was
Mm,
lots of the media. It was very messy when the person found the
yes.
celebrity who had chosen to do that. And she came to me after being in there a week and she goes, "I'm exhausted. I feel sick." The other guy had already started absconding. So I wasn't even aware that they were struggling. So I went to the managing director and goes, "We need to get these people some support." And his response was, "Isn't this what they're trained to do? Why do they need extra support?" And I
Yep.
was so taken aback by that. I knew it now looking back, I wish I'd gone, "Excuse me, what about the health and safety of your employees, which are my employees?" But I was so stunned that
Yes.
he would that I went, "Well, what's wrong with me as a manager that I think they need that support?" So I actually helped them find support outside of the workplace because I could see how much they were hurting. But isn't that interesting? And I wonder how many people listening who are owners or managers or have startups of their own kind. And because we're so in it all the time, and as you've heard Natalie's story progress, her adrenaline went up. And we can all see now that the reason why she got bored when she came back from Port Arthur is because she wasn't living on adrenaline and cortisol anymore. So her body felt numb, right?
Exactly.
And she equated that to boredom. But how many of us are saying to our staff members, "Suck it up, princess"? Or how many, we might not even be saying that with our language, but our behavior. And that's one of the things I really want to help people understand is we can no longer ignore anyone's cry for help. Anywho.
Absolutely. And that's, again, back in 1996, and I worked with an occupational rehab provider company
Yeah.
that helped people who had workplace injuries to get
Yeah.
back to work. And thankfully, the landscape's definitely changed
Yes.
and more accepting and more understanding of burnout. But all those things, I know for many of your listeners are our age, Joe. They have a history of working really hard, giving it their all, and seeing clients that have had lots of trauma, lots of significant workplace injuries, all those sorts of things. And when we hear stories constantly, no matter what self-care practices we have in place, how great, which I thought I was, and I did get really good at compartmentalizing things. That was my big strategy. And having black humor, a really bad sense of humor. But
Yes.
that is what in our profession gets us through and helps us to cope. And, I do a lot of work with emergency services personnel, particularly police officers, and I would hear the graphic details of their stories. I would work with victims of crime who'd had people in their lives murdered, and I would have to sit there and go through coroner's reports and things like that. So no matter what I did, I did cope. I coped very, very well for a long time. However, my body retained all that vicarious trauma in my nervous system. And there was no way of me understanding and knowing how to let that out at the time. And that's only recently that I've actually worked that one out. So again, I did say I'm a slow learner, but I have learned and I'm learning.
Yeah, and I think that's the key here is, or a key for our listeners is burnout's not inevitable, but it's highly likely. And the quicker, like any health professional will say, early intervention is the best intervention. Except like you, I went, oh, funny lump on my breast. Let's ignore that for 2 years until I had a situation where I was like, I don't think I can ignore that anymore. But like you, I had the autoimmune disease first, and then I had a cancer diagnosis, and then that obviously wasn't enough. So now I've got a chronic neurological condition. That's like, whoa, hang on a minute. What is it? Am I just weak? Now, yeah.
And that comes in a lot.
Yes.
And, where this stuff isn't talked about. And I'm so excited that you are talking about this and that you're okay about me sharing this message, because I'm not the sort of person that can sit back and be silent. It's got me into trouble a number of times. That's why I work for myself for so long, because I would see injustices or social injustice and I'd speak up. So unless we have these conversations, nothing changes. We continue to destroy our professionals in all the allied health profession fields.
Yeah,
we need to talk about it.
We really do, and this season of the podcast, I've got people who are talking into, we can talk about your individual experience a lot. We can talk about my individual experience a lot. We can victim blame in some. It's like, if you just got better at resilience, you wouldn't burn out. If you just went and did this training, you wouldn't burn out. If you just addressed this self-sacrificing need that you have, then you wouldn't burn out. You can't put a healthy person back into a very unhealthy work environment and think that it's not going to affect them. And we listen to horrible stories every day. It doesn't matter if you're a physiotherapist or an occupational therapist or regardless, people just have horrible stories. Absolutely. It doesn't have to be a Port Arthur massacre for it to be a horrible story. It could be, I have seen 7 people today who have all had excruciating back pain from an injury they didn't cause.
Yeah.
Like that stuff starts, and nothing I am doing is helping. And I think for me, my burnout was a lot around, I am not seeing any change. I can do all this great individual work, but the systems I found myself in, or the systems I found that I needed to be accountable to, I felt them injurious. And I still find them injurious.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that, Jo, because I've just actually written a chapter in a book, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. The fact that the system is perpetuating our illness. It really is.
In Australia right now, I find this abhorrent, but somebody put it into words yesterday. In Australia right now, we have the business of disability. It is called the NDIS, but it is the business of disability, and it serves no one, particularly the people who need the services, right? But it just got me thinking, the business of mental health. And I think we all have this problem where it's like, we don't like talking about money. We don't like asking for money because, receiving money on the end of somebody's traumatic experience or negative health event feels icky. It feels horrible. So I know that you're a great overfunctioner.
we are a little alike there, Jo, I would suggest.
So do you think that some of that mentality, even though, because you and I we worked on our money mindset for a really long time together, right? We went and sat at the feet of somebody who was great at it, but not a particularly nice person.
We did.
But we really worked on our money mindset. Yeah. But do you think that there is some inherent thing about being a health professional that still makes that quite, or you're nodding your head, that still makes that awkward, that there has to be an exchange of money because, we need to feed our kids, right?
Absolutely. And
that values conflict. Sorry, keep going.
I totally agree that most health professionals, let's be honest, we get into the business of whatever it is, whether it's physio, OT, speech, rehab
Mm.
counselling, psychology, doesn't matter what it is, we get into our roles and our professions to help people.
Yes, we do.
And unfortunately, society has set us up really with these beliefs as well that are very much perpetuated, that you're there to help people, to make a difference. And the type of personalities often really attracted to our industry have this underlying deep-seated belief of, but you can't take people's money while you do that. So I do think that we're slowly starting to shift that as well.
Yes.
And as you know, I've done a lot of money breakthrough coaching work, and I do very firmly now say to people that the more money we can make, the more people we can help and the greater impact we can have.
Yeah.
And we need to hear that and know that it's okay. We have families to feed as well. We're not doing the wrong thing. I think that makes us better at our job because we value it more. Because if someone's paying well for a service, then we will over deliver, because that's what we do.
Yes,
we want to give them the best that we possibly can. And that can often work hand in hand in validating things for us as health professionals, that we have the right to charge what we're worth because we are changing our clients' lives.
We certainly, and to put it into a very simplistic context, if you could, all of the listeners visualize Maslow's hierarchy. If we don't have our finances sorted, nothing we do is going to, it's a foundational thing. It's right at the bottom. We need to feel safe, and money helps us feel safe because we work and live in capitalist societies. And you can choose to remove yourself from that, but you're probably going to not listen to this podcast ever. So I think the purpose of this conversation, or the point of this conversation, is to help us all understand that even people with 30 plus years of experience who have grown up in these systems, we just want to normalize that this stuff's hard, that we've got personality factors at play. Doesn't mean you're bad, doesn't mean you're evil, doesn't mean you're broken, but we've got systemic issues at play. You know, some of them are bad, some of them are broken, but they're made up of people. Yeah. We don't live in an environment where we've got unlimited resources. Like here in Australia, we just we don't. The cost of living in Sydney,
and in some regional areas.
Yes, exactly.
If you live on the north coast,
your fuel prices.
Oh, I
it's
know.
like, oh my God, can we get jerry cans the next time we have to drive through Port Macquarie?
I know.
Sorry. Anyway, as a side note, these are the realities of the situation. Merchant bankers and cryptocurrency traders are not having these conversations. You know, social media influencers taking up all the space in Canggu in Bali are not having these conversations. It's the health professionals who are dedicated to their work because they see hurting humanity who need to have these conversations.
And so, I think, Jo, for that as a profession, we really need to do some work around those beliefs that it is okay to make money. Yeah. It's okay to have money, as I said, because the more, not that we're greedy and we have to be millionaires. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying, but we have to charge adequately for our services so we can have a greater impact, and the ripple effect can go from that.
We also need to be able to afford the things that help us take care of ourselves. So I'm going to give a really cool example here. And I would love for you to be thinking, Natalie, of what your equivalent of this would be. So I see a massage therapist every 2 weeks. I love her dearly. She has this amazing ability to read my body with her hands. I don't have to say anything, but she finds the sore spots.
Oh, perfect.
And we were just chatting one day when my face was in that massage bed hole. And she goes, oh, my massage therapist said, and I stopped. because I'd never thought a massage therapist needing a massage therapist, right?
Mm.
And she said, so she was talking to me, and I said, hang on a minute. What does your massage therapist do with you? And it's all about hands and forearms and shoulders. And I went,
Mm.
of course. She goes, Jo, I wouldn't be able to keep doing this if I didn't have my, if this wasn't a part of my work. This is not a negotiable for me. If you want to
Yeah.
keep seeing me, I need to keep doing this. And I
Mm.
heard that and I went, oh my God, what if I had set myself up differently in my career to begin with? We didn't know back then, right? I'm
No,
being compassionate
exactly.
here. But what do you think a mental health professional's equivalent could be of the massage therapist getting massages?
Oh, yes. Again, I'm not going to say a psychologist. No disrespect to other fellow psychologists. But I think for me, in what I've learned, again, in retrospect, after getting to the point where I was so broken that I had to stop working altogether, that I've always been one for professional development and things like that. But the most valuable person or profession for me has been a mentor / coach.
Right. Yeah.
Whether that's a business coach, whatever, it doesn't matter. But the most significant turning point for me was when my coach last year said to me, can I swear, Jo?
Yep.
She
We already
swears.
warned everyone.
Yeah. We refer to her as having a fluffy sledgehammer. Well, I needed a sledgehammer because the 4x2s that had hit me in the past, I wasn't listening to. And she said, for fuck's sake, Nat, will you do something about your self-sacrificing pattern?
Wow.
And
that would have been hard to hear in the moment.
Oh, absolutely. Did I get cranky? Yes, absolutely. I thought, how dare you? How dare you? But I thought her role and what I pay her the big dollars for is to call me out and to help me be a better version of myself. So,
nice.
Yes, I've felt broken. Yes, I've been referred to psychologists. That was a disaster because they let me down. They completely shattered my trust, and don't even go there. That's another whole podcast episode. Being let down by your own professionals, like, hang on, I need someone who gets it.
Yes.
And interestingly, the person I've chosen as my mentor / coach, whatever you want to call it, is someone who has also experienced significant burnout, openly talks about her head in the bucket moment of realizing something had to change, and she's done something, and she's a few steps ahead of me.
Nice.
Or more than a few steps ahead of me. But I respect her enough to go, thank you. I've done all this work over the years, all the professional development, all the breakthrough, all the stuff and things and everything we think we need to do. But I'd missed this. And I then I didn't ask her to do it. I found my own way, and I had the big breakthrough session, which totally changed everything. And I feel like the best way to describe it is it's changed my DNA.
Wow.
I could finally get to the core of why I did what I did. And it was an intergenerational trauma thing that I never would have seen in a million years.
Wow. Now everybody's on edge going, tell us more, Nat. What is this thing? Does it have a name? Is it a technique?
Yeah, it's a process that I learned. It's actually a type of NLP. And I know you've done a bit of that, a breakthrough session.
But we don't hate NLP on this podcast. We hate people who use it for bad things.
Yes. I would never use it for bad things. So, of course, I developed up my model because I had to do it my way. I needed to still have control. Yes. So I found the person that I wanted and I said, here's my script, here's my process. Can you do that on me? Because I trusted her enough and she did. and I knew it was going to work. So it was more releasing, going through negative emotions of anger, sadness, hurt, shame, power, guilt, all the things.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept having these things release and going, yeah, but I still feel like there's something there.
Mm-hmm.
And then the very end.
Damn it.
Oh, I knew there was something, but I couldn't articulate what it was.
Yeah.
I don't know how much detail you want me to go into,
No,
but
no.
I now know why I couldn't articulate it. And and of course, the mirror is a really good teacher.
Yes.
Things that I never really completely, that I was a skeptic about,
Mm-hmm.
was the thing where it was hidden. Of course. Going through the process. And it was what I loved. It was done in one session.
Wow.
It was a very long, exhausting session. So it was like our breakthrough sessions
Mm-hmm.
that we do in
Mm-hmm.
NLP, but modified to be more holistic,
Mm-hmm.
based on all the years of experience I've had and my research and my own. I need to test it on me, as well as my other clients. So I knew that I had something there that was going to work. So I did that, got to the bottom thing, it's like a timeline therapy.
Okay.
Sort of version of that, but modified my way. And then she got to the thing, and the very last one, and it was around the guilt and shame.
Mm.
And she said, and go back to the place, and I'm like, well, I can't see anything. It's dark. It's black.
Mm.
She said, do you think, and I go, here we go. Do you think you could be in utero? Oh, for goodness sake. Oh, I said, don't be ridiculous. Just try that out for me. Okay, then, I said.
Just to prove you wrong.
Okay, I'll humor you, I said.
Yeah.
And we're doing it on Zoom. So it's something, it doesn't have to be in person. It was on Zoom, and it felt more comfortable to me doing it on Zoom. I had my own space and I could be me. And there it was.
Wow.
My mum, and I don't mind sharing this, she's not alive to hear it. And I don't think the people that we know are going to listen to this, so it's okay. My mum was pregnant with me. I was born in the May, and this was in the January of the year I was born. And her sister was the very first Australian radiographer.
Oh, wow.
To go overseas.
Okay.
So she worked in England.
Yep.
And I've since, in the last couple of years, found letters that she'd written to my mum about how exciting it was that she was going to have a baby, and she couldn't wait to come back and meet her niece or nephew. And she was killed in a car accident.
Oh, shite.
Yeah, on the 20th of January, 1969. And so that was only a few months before I was born. And I always knew my middle name is named after her, and I'd always felt a deep connection. Of course, I never met her, and I never understood why. So my mum, I now know that I was in utero, and she had to do the ultimate self-sacrifice. She had to focus on me and never deal with her grief and her trauma of losing her sister. And I thought, oh my God, it finally made sense. And that, to me, changed everything. It finally made sense. I knew where this deep stuff had come from. I could put it into perspective, and I could release it. And I was like, oh, I honestly feel like my DNA has changed.
Wow. Outstanding.
And I don't know. I can't describe it. And the reason I now know was that I could never put words. I knew there was something, but I didn't know what it was, because I was in utero. I didn't have words.
Exactly. I'm just thinking you didn't have any real other ways of communicating what was going on. You couldn't.
No. So
you couldn't.
I know, I don't know whether that it's what your listeners wanted to hear, and it sounds really weird, but it
Well,
changed everything. It gave me an understanding of why I do what I do. Not that I'm definitely not blaming my mum. I think, oh my God, I can't believe she went through this.
yeah.
And interestingly, you know, my mum also died on the 20th of January, 25 years later to
Wow.
the day after her
Wow.
sister died. Like, that's not a coincidence either, is it?
Yeah, we could get into the spooky
Yeah.
story of parents dying coincidentally, but we won't do that now. What I
No,
appreciate
so,
about
yeah.
you sharing that, Nat, is I think that there's this tendency amongst health professionals to kind of go, burnout is inevitable. I'll just keep going until I can't go anymore. And that this might not even be verbalized or conscious. I'll just keep going until I can't go anymore. I'll just keep going until I can't go anymore. But what I want you to take away from this is there's always a way we can get help. If Nat's story hasn't shown you anything other than this, then please go back and listen to it again, which is she's been committed to investigating a way, the way for her at the time, so that she can live peacefully and learn how to just be in this world without it taking such a toll. So that's the story I'm hearing here. And from 1994 until 2024, like, we've learnt a lot, you've learnt a lot, you've experienced a lot. What would you say to, say, a newly graduated health professional who's maybe in the first 2 years of their career? What are 3 key things that they could be doing to learn from you to help them navigate their career in a healthy way?
Oh, great question.
Yeah, and you weren't prepared for that one because it's not on the question sheet.
No, of course not. I would think the very first thing is I would honestly get a coach or a mentor from the beginning.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Regardless of whether you're in private practice or not.
Oh, no, because, and I didn't need, and certainly at the beginning, I certainly didn't need a psychologist. There was nothing wrong with me. I wasn't broken. And that's sort of what we think. And yes, have peer supervision. Absolutely. Do your self-care activities. For me, it's, as you know, having a coffee by the beach.
Yeah.
And when I don't do that, I'm completely out of balance and out of whack. And, you know, interestingly, I haven't done that lately. I'm thinking, oh, why was I really tired yesterday? Because I haven't done what I need to do to replenish myself. So find your thing, whether it's a walk in nature, going to the gym, whatever it is, do that regularly, make time for that. So that, having a coach or a mentor, because I think that's essential, because they will ask us the challenging questions.
Well, and they give us perspective as well. I remember, like, you gave a great story about how your coach finally got you to address the thing. I had a very similar experience. A couple of, might have even been last year, where I actually went to my coach and went, hey, if I start talking about my migraines having gone for 10 days, can you tell me that it's okay to stop work? And she told me no. She said, I actually don't want you coming if you've got a migraine at all. I actually don't think that's what you should be doing. So I went to her for help to grow my business, and what she actually ended up helping me do was step away from work completely. Now, not everybody needs to step away from work. The absence of work is not the answer here. No. It's what Nat and I have needed because of the way we didn't take notice, and our bodies are going, how much louder do I need to scream for you to start taking notes? So please don't hear that the absence of work is the antidote to burnout. It's actually not. So let's go back to
that's us. That's us longer term older people who were slow learners and couldn't read our bodies. So find another practice that helps you get in tune with yourself internally would be my other major advice, because I blocked that out. It was too painful.
Yeah.
It was to, oh my God, then I'll have to listen and I'll have to stop, and I don't have time to stop because I got to keep going. And if I had been more attuned to me,
Yes,
and had a greater relationship with my three brains, my head brain, my heart brain, and my gut brain, I would be in a very different position right now. Doesn't mean it can't be undone.
No.
It doesn't mean that I don't live a much better way now.
Yes.
In hindsight. But for your young, new therapists coming in, do those things while you can. You don't want to get to the point where you and I are living with chronic autoimmune disorders, chronic pain conditions, and with your migraines, my complex regional pain syndrome, all of those things. And I look and I think, how many health professionals, this is a whole other area of research, are carrying autoimmune disorders, complex pain syndromes, because we haven't, not that we haven't got strategies in place to manage hearing our clients' stories, because I do think we do that fairly well. It's just that if we don't find a practice, whether that's mindfulness, yoga, whatever, none of that ever worked for me because my brain never switches off. For me, it's been in the last year where I found a practice called TRE, which is trauma and tension release exercises, which helps those things that are stuck in your nervous system release however you feel your body wants to let them release. So that's it's been around a long time, but for me, it's a newer practice. And it's been brilliant in slowly, at my pace, letting go of my client stories. Really is what they are, that were stuck in there that I thought I'd got rid of. But we know, as Bessel van der Kolk tells us, that the body keeps the score.
Yes, he does. Thank you for that. Nat, that's it. Well, and I think thanks, Bessel, because you've given us some legitimacy to what we're feeling rather than our own internal self-talk, which tells us that we're weak and incapacitated. And I don't need any more help feeling weak. I'm already feeling that. I need to grab a hold of my inner strength. And I think that's a lot of health professionals just don't realize how strong we are. If you ever talk to a non-health professional about the work you do, one of the first things that they will tell you is, God, that work sounds hard. And we brush it off.
Exactly.
We brush it off.
Yeah.
We brush. I think building bridges sounds hard, but you listen, Joe, anywho, sorry. That's
but
all
it's
right.
true. It's true. Yeah. We minimize it. What other people look at us and are in awe of, we just go, that's just who we are. That's what we do. And we minimize it. So maybe that's the other tip. Stop minimizing what you do.
Yes.
Stop minimizing the impact you have the capacity to have in the world.
Absolutely.
People are always watching. People are always observing. And we lead by example. Maybe not so well at times. What?
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to leave it there because I think that's incredibly powerful, Nat. People are always watching, and the community at large looks to health professionals specifically around how do we address mental health? How do we address physical health? And if we can't lead them by being better examples or willing to acknowledge when, hey, with the knowledge we have today, this is what I would do differently, which is what this conversation has ended up being about. So thank you, Nat.
Thank you, Jo. This is the conversation we need to have.
Absolutely.
That's
why I'm doing
it. People leaving. There's a mass exodus.
Yeah, we haven't got the talent in Australia to fill all vacancies. And we wonder why we've got excruciatingly long wait lists. People are leaving the profession. We don't have enough people graduating. Anywho, I'm trying to get some universities to talk to me about this, but nobody has said yes yet. Anywho.
Yes.
So you've mentioned coffee by the beach. So now I'm going to take us back to this happy subject. The next time we get to see each other, which hopefully won't be in 10 years' time.
Hopefully not.
And we're going to the cafe, probably the one that we found on that beach that day we were together.
Sandbox Cafe at
There we go. We'll go back to Sandbox. So what am I ordering for you, Nat, when we go back to Sandbox Cafe in Port?
You are ordering me in a mug.
Okay.
A long black
Okay.
with cream on the side.
All right. All righty. I think I can do that. A long black with cream on the side. I love it. And they do good coffee there, and the puppies are allowed. So I guess we bring the puppies too.
That's the best thing, isn't it? We can bring our puppies.
Yeah. So Nat, I am conscious that you're not working at the moment. So I don't want to drive thousands of people to an email list where they're not going to be able to access you. But where would you like people to learn more about you? Do you want to direct them to your podcast? What do you want to do? How do you want to make that work?
Yeah, you will find me on the Growing Tall Poppies podcast, and there's a really good episode 4 that I did with the wonderful Joe Muirhead, which I would suggest everyone goes and listens to. and I'm actually in the process of giving my website a revamp because I've developed, because I'm not working.
Things change. Yeah.
But as you know, I loved how when we talked that you said to me, I'm on sabbatical. And I went, that's it. I'm on sabbatical, which means I can still study and research.
Yeah. So that's why I've called it sabbatical. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, because
not being told that I can't work made me feel less than, which
absolutely.
I didn't want to go to.
Same. And
which is why the antidote to burnout is not working. Anyway, for you,
exactly.
Yes.
Yes. So for me, it's been around being creative. So I'm developing my website's just www.drnataliegreen.com.au, DR, doctor. And I'm coming up with some really exciting things around trauma archetypes. So there'll be a quiz on there soon, which is a bit of fun, and it will help us understand what is happening for us and where we resonate with our experience of trauma. And I'm not talking it has to be major trauma.
No.
It can be burnout, exhaustion, all of that leads to trauma. Being alive, as we talked about recently, being alive in 2020 during COVID
was traumatic.
Was traumatic. And it changed our nervous systems.
Yep, absolutely. And we're seeing the outcomes of that now. We're just starting to see the outcomes of that now.
Absolutely.
Now, this has been a wonderful conversation, and I'm sure the listeners are going to want to put on repeat. I think we did pretty well curtailing our language, by the way, as well.
We did. I only used one, and I thought I did ask permission, but
I think I possibly did more than you. Anywho.
Anyway,
I'm going to sign off now. This is Jo Muirhead, who has been with the fabulous Dr. Natalie Green today, and this is the Entrepreneurial Clinician Podcast. My challenge to you, dear listener, today is I want you to go and think about these 3 things. Who can you bring into your world as a coach mentor who gives you perspective on your personhood in your career? Who is that person that you're going to really learn to trust? What is a self-care activity that is going to ground you? For Nat, it's going to the beach and having a coffee. For me, it's walking around barefoot. What is something that you're going to return to time and time again? And where are you going to go and get your peer consultation or peer supervision from? You need to get that organized. That's something that we're all going to, regardless of whether you're a physical therapist, an occupational therapist, we all need this if we are going to stay fit for purpose, to fulfill the passion and the dream that we had on our first day of university, which was, I want to help people. So until next episode, I'm Jo Muirhead. I'm looking forward to connecting with you all. Go forth, be awesome, and I'll be back soon.